Great to have you here
Welcome to the podcast.
with me and my guests from around the world. Welcome to the Simone Feiler podcast.
Welcome to this podcast.
Let's get into it, shall we? On the Simone Feiler podcast. Well, I feel like I've been through an intensive 4-day leadership course today, wrapping up the session with Martin G. Moore's debut audiobook, No Bullshit Leadership. Martin spent 30 plus years in management and countless hours over the last 15 years as a senior executive mentoring leaders. And when he received the teary phone call from his daughter, Emma, where she said, and not for the first time, "Dad, I love my job, but my boss has no idea what she's doing and I just want to quit." Martin realised then that across a broad spectrum of businesses, most leaders just do not have a clue how to lead. In fact, he said he could count the number of exceptional leaders he's worked with on just one hand. Welcome, Martin G. Moore, to my podcast.
Hey, Simone, great to be here.
Yeah.
I feel like I know you so well after 4 days recording with you.
I know, it's pretty intense, isn't it? It's like, I'm picking you up on every little tiny little breath and pop that you've got going there.
I know, that's the common theme in my life. Critical women around me. It's great. Keeps me
good.
honest.
That's why you've written this book, Martin.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I want to investigate a little bit more about that phone call with Emma and how it paved the way to you being here now.
Yeah, good question. I mean, that was one conversation in a string of many over a few years. It stands out particularly in Emma's mind more than it does mine, but I used to talk her off the ledge once every few weeks, and I think her observation was, okay, I can always call my dad and he'll have an answer for me and he'll have a coping strategy. But my friends don't, and the people I mix with don't, and the leaders I work for don't. And so how do we actually get some of this stuff into their hands? And so that's really what started her thinking down the lines of, we've got to get this out into the world rather than having you only giving this to a company you're working for.
Clever girl.
Oh, she's very clever. She's the lifeblood of this business. She really is.
Yeah, well, I was actually going to say, who's in charge? Who's running the place? Is it yourself or Emma now?
Well, she is. She's the CEO of Your CEO Mentor, really because she handles all of the stuff that gets our product to market. Right. So I specialise in the content. Now, obviously, after a 33-year career where I've run multi-billion-dollar businesses, I'm pretty buttoned down on strategy, marketing, finance, and all that sort of stuff. But it is a new world.
Yes.
And she knows this new world because she's run a marketing agency. So she knows how it all hangs together, and she knows how the world of marketing, promotion, and content is actually leveraged. Right. So she's definitely the driving force, there's no doubt about it.
And I really like the way that you always go back to her, giving her obviously the power she deserves, saying I have to get in touch with Emma to find out if I can be there, if I can stay longer. So obviously you're talking the truth when you're talking about your no bullshit leadership, that you actually know how to implement and actually to deliver.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's all about results, and we have the right accountabilities in place. So I don't step across her turf and she doesn't step across mine, although we're constantly aware of what each other is doing and we're constantly talking about things and seeking each other's advice on the things that we're working on. So I'll say to her, hey, what do you think of this topic? How do you think it's going to go with our community? And she'll equally say, do you like this creative I've prepared for today's posts?
Yeah.
So we're constantly bouncing things off each other, but we trust each other to do the job we do.
Yeah, that's another thing that I love about your book, to actually trust people in the job that they're doing.
Absolutely.
So let's go way back before Emma was a twinkle in your eye. What did you want to be when you grew up?
It's funny because I don't have any real defining memory of what I wanted to be.
Right.
As I got older, I was brought up in Sydney, and I went to one of those...
We won't hold that against you. Although I suppose with the horrendous Origin result last night.
Yeah, Sydney still feels like home when I go there, even though I've been in Brisbane for 20 years now.
Right.
I still love Sydney. I love its energy. But, you've got to have a lot of money to live in Sydney, Will.
You do.
So it's a different sort of lifestyle there. And we love the weather in Queensland as well, given that we're just about to move to a cold part of the US. But when I was growing up, I went to a very exclusive school in Sydney. My parents weren't wealthy, but they really believed in education, so they sent us all to great schools. And when I came out of that school, I was fortunate enough to have qualified for any degree course in any university in the country.
Fabulous.
So I didn't want to be a doctor. I started off doing law at the University of Sydney, and I hated it.
Oh.
Not because there was anything wrong with the course, not because I, couldn't adapt to the law, but I was just coming out of 6 years in an all-boys boarding school.
Right.
And I had no interest in doing any more study.
Yeah.
Because I discovered beer, dating and rugby, and that was a full-time force in my life, and I had time to work to earn the money to do that, and that was about all. So I scraped through a couple of years by not going to lectures and tutorials and, just doing the very, very bare minimum. They say in undergraduate degrees, 50 is a pass, and 51's too much work.
Right.
So I took that approach to heart. But when I started dropping below the 50 mark, it wasn't very popular, and I didn't want to do it anyway. So I got into software development.
Yeah.
And started working for a bank as a software developer, and my career developed from there.
Well, it's certainly kind of taken a bit of a different spin to where you are now. How did the leadership journey then come, after you started working in those industries? Was it as a manager?
Yes, it was, certainly as a project manager, but I'd realised straight away that the people I was working for didn't have good leadership skills. And I was pretty much left to my own devices to work out what I should do, how I should do it, set my own standards for excellence where they wouldn't set it for me. But I found that the skills I had in leadership and the capability I was developing over time was really a differentiator. And I learnt fairly early on that I could only go so far on my own individual brilliance, such as it was, and that I really needed to work out how to get the most out of other people. And it was that journey, that unbelievably unquenchable desire to find out what made people tick and to help unlock that really drove me forward.
And how did you find that you actually had that gift to do that with people?
I guess a lot of it goes back to how I was brought up, and it wasn't a gift. It was really something I worked on. I mean, anyone can work on this stuff. Unlocking people's potential starts first with connection and connecting with them and developing a level of trust. And once you do that, you really have a lot of power to help them. Without that, you have no power. They're not listening. The shutters are down. And so being able to do that is incredibly powerful. And I am at least a fast learner. So when I see that stuff and see how it works, I go, oh shit, do more of that. That's a good idea. Do more of that. And so it was through trial and error finding the things that worked and didn't. And of course, every individual's different. So there are so many different permutations and combinations that it's a never-ending social experiment to see what works best with all different types of people.
Obviously still ongoing.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, you never reach the finish line.
Yeah, that's right.
You'll remember that quote from the book from John Wooden, which says, it's what you learn after you know it all that counts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was one thing that made me go cold. There were many things in the book that made me go cold. I have actually jotted down the page of the printed copy, 275, because that's got the rundown
that's
of
right.
exactly what, like...
Couple of those common use expressions, yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
there's very interesting things that you cover in the book with the, in particular, we chatted about after yesterday's session with the golfer who, 4 out of 10 people, of the professionals actually land on the green.
The fairway, yeah. So I'll tell that. You're clearly not a golfer, Simone. That's okay. Neither am I really. I was listening this morning and couldn't hit the ball.
Well, you should see how bad I am. I've tried to hit the ball once. That was enough. I just messed up the grass.
Yeah. And that, look, I think we can learn a lot from professional sports about the concept of perfectionism. And even though they're constantly working to get better, perfectionism is just not in the game. And so that quote I used in the book is that of the top professional golfers, the top 5 professional golfers in the PGA Tour, these guys are making millions of bucks every year. They only hit the fairway after they tee off 60% of the time. 4 times out of 10, they don't hit the ball where they intend to.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And that's an incredible statistic.
Yeah,
to make us think,
the top of the world.
You don't got to be perfect. You just got to do things consistently the right way and just keep improving and do it as well as you can.
And that's another thing I love about your book. You always reference excellence over perfection.
Totally.
You've been a very busy man. So obviously you're working together with your daughter on your CEO mentor, Emma. You have written a book. Have you written that together or you penned it yourself?
No, this falls into my bailiwick of content.
Right.
So I wrote the whole thing myself.
Yeah. And how long did it take you to write?
Well, funny you should mention that because I sort of feel almost responsible for the COVID pandemic when it hit last year.
Oh, okay. We've got someone to blame finally.
You may have someone, I tell you, because it was only 2 weeks before we started the lockdowns in Australia that I was on the phone to Emma complaining about the fact that I couldn't find writing time.
Oh, no.
I had a very busy client load at the time.
And the universe opens.
I know, I said to her, I said, Em, I just need 3 months locked down, no clients, I just need to write this book. And she said, okay, Dad, but how are you going to get that? I said, I just need to find a way. I need to find a way. Lo and behold, 2 weeks later, the country shuts down. I mean, you should have seen the look on my face. I'm going, shit, did I do that? Sorry, everyone. Sorry.
Oh, laughing out loud. I'm a great believer in the universe.
I know.
You are responsible. Well, so it certainly gave you some time then.
Yes, it did, yeah. And I locked myself away. And you can't just sit down and keep writing until you finish. It's a thing where you have to write and reflect upon and come back on. So I think I first put the proposal up to seek a literary agent in the US in probably early September of 2019. We had the agent acquired, Jim Levine, who's a fantastic agent, one of the top guys in New York, picked up the project.
That's sensational. Congratulations.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, thank you. None of which I could have done without Nick Morgan, who's my mentor, who knows this industry back to front, publishing and speaking, and has guided me every step of the way. So huge kudos to Nick. But Jim, of course, gave us some publishing options. We went with Rosetta Books, fantastic publishing house. We deal directly with the CEO, Arthur Klebanoff, who's a great guy. But they have the power and global distribution might of Simon & Schuster. So we get the best of both worlds, a small publishing house with the distribution might of S&S, which is brilliant.
Yeah, that's massive.
So we signed the contract with S&S in March. I committed to deliver the book by the end of August of 2020.
Okay.
So exactly a year to the day from delivering the manuscript, it will be published in the US.
Oh, exciting.
So 31 August 2020, we delivered it. 31st of August 2021, it hits the bookshelves.
That is insanely quick.
Yeah, it is, but it's but the writing process itself was probably only 3 or 4 months at the most.
Right.
And there were many revisions, chapter by chapter, and then the whole thing to find out what it was missing, and to put those things in. There's a very structured process. And I don't know if you've ever heard the quote from Mark Twain, where he wrote a letter to someone, and he started off by saying, "I would have written you a shorter letter, but I didn't have time." So there's a lot of discipline in writing in a tight and succinct way, so that it's simple enough but not oversimplified.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we spend a lot of time on the style as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that from going through the content, it is very easily understood. Your points are very specific and very modern, I've got to say, because I've also worked in industry, in particular in the radio industry, and leaders in that industry. I remember one guy saying to me that I would have to work it out myself, one of my leaders.
Absolutely.
I'm like, well, can you give me sort of some instructions as to what I'm doing wrong?
Looking for clues, yeah, absolutely. Well, see, the problem is, it's not they're bad people, it's not that they have any ill intent or anything else, it's just that they don't focus on it, they don't pay attention to developing the leadership capability they need to have to be decent leaders for their people. They just focus on their technical skills and their competencies there, and so many very senior executives, like people being paid $1 million to $5 million a year in salary, aren't good leaders. They're super smart, they're really experienced and knowledgeable, they've got good judgment, they understand risk, they're really good operators, but as leaders, they're terrible. And so, you see this over and over again, and I saw a lot of it in my corporate career. Yeah,
you definitely saw holes in there, and you've certainly filled them with, some of the information in your book. Leadership is not about going back and telling your subordinates how to do their job, or I can do this better, or you do it like that. It's actually about letting them grow and leading them.
Absolutely. Create the vacuum and let them fill it.
Yeah.
And if they can't, find someone who can. It's pretty straightforward if you say it fast enough.
Yeah. If you're thinking about being a good leader, and you actually make a comment in your book about, when I asked you what did you want to be when you grew up, no one says I want to be like a
No, they all want to be astronauts and firefighters, right? No one wants to be a leader.
That's right.
It's hard yakka.
Yeah. But people do, and if you do want to do it, then you need to read Martin G. Moore's book, No Bullshit Leadership, and listen to the audio when it comes out, hopefully around about the time this podcast is out. It should be out and about. at your favourite online retailer. But Martin, not only have you written a book, you're a public speaker as well. How did that all come about?
Well, I probably started there. Speaking has always been one of the things, in communication in particular, whether it's written or verbal, has been one of my strengths from a young age. So I was a champion debater at school. I sort of carried that through. I always loved the opportunity of getting out on a stage in front of people. And in fact, when I'm at my most comfortable and energised and just in my space, in my sweet spot, it's when I'm on stage. And whether it's, 100 people or 1,000 people, or hopefully in the US, tens of thousands of people, that's where I'm at my happiest. And so that's what I gravitate towards.
Yeah.
Now, of course, with everything closed down for the last, year or two, very, very difficult for the speaking circuit. And Australia is very small in any case.
Yeah.
But over in the US, it's starting to pick up again. And I'll be there in the fall speaking season over there. For those Australians who are listening, that's autumn. But I'll be there for this fall publishing and speaking season. And that's how I intend to spend the majority of my waking hours, is doing that and content production.
Are you moving there?
Yeah.
Permanently?
Yeah, I'm homeless at the moment.
Wow.
So we sold our house in Brisbane a couple of weeks ago, settles in a couple of weeks.
This is happening.
Yeah. Well, my wife's a Bostonian.
Right.
So as soon as my visa comes through, we're just waiting for the finishing touches on that, we'll jump a plane and we're off.
Well, all the best of success. I'm sure that you're going to smash it over there.
Yeah, thanks, Simone.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to it.
Yeah.
It's going to be an adventure, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to meet amazing people. I love the Americans. They're very forgiving and want to hear what you have to say. You know what I mean? They're very open. And yeah, I'm sure you're going to smash it over there, showing them how to lead.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope so. And look, we could have stayed here. We had just a fabulous life here, very comfortable. Love Brisbane, love Australia, love our friends. Of course, both my daughters are in Sydney. Yeah. So we just love the lifestyle here. But, you're only alive once, right?
That's
so you've got to have a crack.
YOLO, as my kids say.
Absolutely. Totally.
YOLO. All right. So, well, you basically said what's next for you. How can people get in contact with you? Because not only do you do that, you also mentor.
Yes.
So how can people contact you?
So the speaking and book website, martingmoore.com, is going to be up very shortly. It'll be up by the time this is released, this podcast.
Awesome.
And also yourceomentor.com, exactly as it sounds, Your CEO Mentor. Yep. That's where you can see all of our products in terms of the podcast and online programs and things like that. A lot of freebies on that site to have a look at.
Yeah, I did have a look. So very generous.
And I think the best way is the podcast. No Bullshit Leadership. If you're in Australia, just go into any of your podcast players, type in the word leadership, and that's the way to get, just a 15 to 20 minute injection of, leadership philosophy and practical tools. There are 145 episodes out there as of yesterday morning, so plenty of stuff to choose from. Flick through the list and just see if anything grabs your fancy. And if you like it, there's plenty more where that came from. Awesome.
Well, congratulations again. Thanks for working with me. Before
Thank
you go,
it's been fantastic.
How did you find it?
I loved the experience. It was great.
Awesome.
The studio you've got here is brilliant. Really, really professional setup, which surprised me because I wasn't going to a big CBD studio with all the production quality and everything else. Fantastic studio. Simone, you were awesome to work with.
Oh, thank you, Mark.
Awesome to work with. Really, really clear in how you gave me direction. Helped me to bring out my best during this last 4 days.
Yeah.
Now, as I talk on the podcast, my voice is a little shredded.
Yes, it is. It is. 4 days intensely talking.
Yeah, but it's been fantastic, and I've really, really enjoyed the experience, and I'm really looking forward to a quality result. I know it's going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to putting it together, and hopefully by the time you're listening to this, it'll be out and about. Thank you, Martin G. Moore. It's been my pleasure working with you today.
Thanks, Simone. You too. Thanks so much.
Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
And my guests from around the world.
Thank you for being a part of this show.
The Simone Feiler Podcast. Catch you next time.
It's a wrap.